Block models. From storyline to gameplay, they are the foundation upon which our game is built. You probably know that throughout the years Magic has experimented with various block models. But have you ever wondered why that happened? Was the change necessary? Did it make the game better or worse? I think it's time we took a comprehensive look. At the very beginning, Magic sets did not follow any continuity on block structure, and each set was largely contained within itself both mechanically and story-wise. This would soon change, and only 3 years after its release, the game had already implemented its first block model. Starting with Mirage in 1996 and continuing all the way to Khans in 2015, a block consisted of a large main set followed by 2 smaller sets, whose size was roughly 50 to 60% of that of the first. Moreover, the release dates were such that essentially players remained on the same plane for a duration of a full year, considering other releases such as core sets, which were once every 2-year product and not tied to a specific plane or storyline. Now that we know this, we can begin to see the pros and cons of the 3-block model. On one hand, it presented a perfect environment for good storytelling, the 3 parts of each block corresponding to the tried and true beginning, middle and end. There was ample time for the set design team to develop the set and its story, as there was enough time for it to unfold naturally instead of feeling rushed. At the same time, players could truly immerse into the story, as there was the plane and its inhabitants, which at least in my opinion also increased player retention, especially in the long run. But as time was the main boon of this model, it was also its greatest weakness. Players spent nearly a year in the same plane, and if the storyline or the plane turned out to be unpopular, it would hurt player engagement, or as we plebs call it, sales. Same could happen if a block was poorly designed from a card balance standpoint. In fact, it did happen exactly with the sets that I mentioned. Mirrodin was a very strong block, and in fact contained cards that are still banned in many formats, more than 20 years after its release. As a result, it led to extremely polarized standard, which in turn led to many players abandoning the game altogether. Dramatic course correction, such as unprecedented number of banned standard cards, as well as laughably depowered following set, did little to alleviate the problem, and in fact may have made it even worse. Imagine this. You have an overpowered block, dominate standard for an entire year. Players begin to leave because they get stomped, don't want to play the same deck or against it, or just can't afford it, since everyone else needs the same cards. You make a single ban and introduce a dramatically underpowered set in an attempt to course correct. Since new cards are intentionally weak, old meta is new meta. Players continue to leave. You get the ban hammer, and ban en masse. Power gamers see their cards get banned and leave. And then there were none. All this left the unfortunate impression that Kamigawa block was a bad and popular set, which especially with the advent of Commander was proven to be false. But that is a topic for another video. Wink wink. Something that deserves a mention is the lore in Shadowmoor block, which consisted of 2 large sets that were paired with 2 smaller sets. Sometimes viewed as a precursor to the 2-block model, I personally consider it a special 4-block set, since events transpired on the same plane and the sets had continuous story. In 2015, the 3-set block model came to an abrupt end and was replaced by the 2-set model, which included a larger main set with roughly 300 cards, followed by a smaller one with around 180. Story-wise, this model largely worked as the last. The first set laid the foundation of the plane and hinted that there is something more than meets the eye, while the second set was the climax of the narrative. Good examples of this are Amonkhet, where the Avengers arrived on the plane, talked to the inhabitants and slowly begin to discover the cruel reality of it all. In the second set, Hour of Devastation, they confront Nicol Bolas but are defeated, which in turn lays the foundation to the subsequent set of Ixalan. The cons of this model were predominantly in the development aspects, as it is difficult for small sets to impact standard, to an extent that is necessary, as they will establish a possible new archetype. Small sets also mean smaller pool of cards to collect, meaning less boosters to open, which reportedly has been reflected in less sales. As a result, this model was quickly shelved. And thus we arrive to the present day. The future is now, as they say, and apparently the future looks like TikTok. The one block model dramatically lowers the risk of unpopular sets. You don't like the story? Playing seems boring. Cowboys in Magic? No worries, mate. The new set is just around the corner. The flow of content is ceaseless, with spoilers for the next set being dropped at the final reveal stream of the current, now apparently old set. Additionally, every set is a novelty, with new planes discovered and new characters introduced almost every month. But all of this comes at a heavy price. The set design team must be under immense pressure to come up with new planes and new stories every quarter of the year, not to mention a bunch of new mechanics. Moreover, the overarching story suffers greatly, since players get to spend so little time on a given plane before being whisked away to the next. Planes begin to lose their wonder and uniqueness. Characters feel disposable and easily forgotten. This makes it harder for players to become invested, and in my opinion will hinder player retention in the long run. So what is to be done then? What would be a model that works? Personally, I grew up with the 3-block model, and I am a big fan of how its structure is a great foundation for an engaging story, but I admit that a whole year on the single plane is unfeasible in the reality of today. Since I came back to the game during Ixalan, I am quite familiar with its model and frankly quite fond of it as well, but I will admit I didn't draft Rivals as much as I did the main set. As for the current model, I believe my opinion on it was quite evident, but it is true that larger sets have their merits, especially gameplay-wise. Each model has its pros and cons, but what if, and hear me out, what if we could combine them, but take only the best, while throwing away the chaff? As I said, the 3-block model is too large, and since there isn't a dramatic difference between it and the 2-block model, except time duration, the 2-block model should remain in place. The smaller second set, however, should be a large one, just like how the 1-block model operates currently. Therefore, set design will have enough time to flesh out the plane, the story, and the characters. The story will have time to develop in front of players, engaging them in the process. The larger second set will be essentially standalone gameplay-wise, with its own independent draft environment, and will have enough room for cards and archetypes to make an impact on standard, thus not being a complete dud, as previous smaller second sets reportedly were. Mind you, this isn't a completely novel idea. On occasion, Wizards themselves had done something similar in the past, with the guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Legions, plus the subsequent special event set of War of the Spark, the twin Innistrad sets, Dominaria United plus the Brothers' War, as well as Phyrexia Orubion and March of the Machine. I would like to underline that all of those sets were large sets, with independent draft environment, continuous storyline, and were extremely popular. Anyway, which block model you like best? What do you think of my suggestion? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching. Cheers!